Hey, everybody. I was just jamming out to those groovy tunes. Nice work on the music there, Tommy.
Well, you know what? We've had the classic Feeding the Ducks music for the Community with Co-Unity podcast for a while. And obviously today we're doing it a bit different. Hey everyone, I'm Tommy. I'm like normally backstage on the Co-Unity podcast, but today we thought we'd have a little bit of a mix up because we're doing something a bit different. I don't know if you want to touch on it, Dan.
Yeah, no, it was unfortunately we had a little bit of a cancellation this week, but I'm stoked for them to come on next week and whatnot. But it was also inspiration, a way to be like, well, why don't we get on more and just talk about more of these things? And I think it'll be really fun for us to jam on this stuff. So, going through some of the frameworks, going through some of the examples, and I've been building a lot of different educational resources and assets for the team and for our strategy and how we approach different components and trying to what's the word, like not gate it, right? So this is not gating, not holding any sort of valuable aspects back, but this is sharing elements of what we talk about as a team internally and diving into the world of ambassador programs is the main topic here today. So yeah, we ought to do more of these, honestly, and I think it'll be fun for us to kind of to jam on this. What do you think, Tommy? Are you stoked for this session? You think this is going to
Yeah, I
be
mean,
good?
like, I think I think the word ambassador is like something we probably say 20 times a day or whatever, maybe more. It'd be good to see the data on that. But we have a lot of conversations about this, on a day-to-day basis with work with clients that we're doing, and just the infrastructure we build and stuff like that. So then to have sessions like this where we're gonna bring that out in the public more, talk it, show the sort of inner working brains of what we're doing at Co-Unity. I think it's going to be a great way that not only everyone can see a bit more of an insight of like the depths of what we do and our kind of approach and perspective of what we're doing. It will help us really, like, when we think back and we bring these topics out, because this is like a completely different sort of discussion than what we'd have internally as well. So I think we're going to learn a lot from it as well, to be honest. So I like to think of this as a group learning session, but really just you and me yapping on, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's always nice just to kind of go for it and go live. There's no editing of the hiccups of the words, of the ums, of the ahs. This is raw, unfiltered, straight live. So yeah, excited to get into it. And I think the point you make there too around, I talk about this a lot, and I was even commenting on some of this recently on the world of LinkedIn, looking at a lot of LinkedIn posts around community, but the buzzword of community in its own way, and then even also of even ambassador programs. Like, what is the definition of an ambassador program? Everyone talks about ambassador program, and is a creator program an ambassador program? Is a volunteer program an ambassador program? It's like all these different layers and definitions and perspectives is opening up a lot of grounds for different people's opinions and perspectives on it, right? Which I think is fascinating to see sometimes. So yeah, we're gonna dive into examples, and I think that's just a bit of a touch on maybe like to set the table a bit where this comes from. I really enjoy reverse engineering things. I think even when I was a little boy taking apart gadgets and things and getting inspired to be a mechanical engineer and whatnot. I just enjoyed that whole element, right? And you learn so much when you take things apart. When you look at a car, trying to understand how it works, the best way to understand how a car works is to take one apart. It's like you really learn all the different components to it when you take something apart and you understand how the pieces fit together then and how they work. And so this is a similar approach to what we're doing right now when it comes to I did a lot of research and lack of better terms, like took apart certain ambassador programs and community onboarding experiences and different things like this for the last 4 years, and taking a look then at what worked well there, what didn't seem to work well there, and you can take those lessons, understand those components, and this can help you start to assemble those together into your own working model. So that's a little bit of the foundational grounds and an analogy there. I don't know if you does that land for you? Anything to add on there, Tommy?
Yeah, for sure. I think something you touched on there as well is like it's like people's perspectives of what these different words mean. It really comes down to the goals of these companies and what they really want to get out. But for me, it's like, I've had my fair share in the past of being parts of like ambassador programs and stuff like that. So my perspective of it is completely like from my experience on that. And it's like when we actually collect all these different experiences together, really align ourselves with them kinds of goals. Yeah, it's interesting that like, this is why you can't copycat different ambassador programs or different programs. Like everyone's got to be different. Everyone's got to have their own thing.
Totally. No, I think this is a good point. And so yeah, let's get into it. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna pull this up here in a second. And also something to be transparent about as well is there's a few projects here that are our clients, and also there are a few projects here that we've had conversations with the people who've built these programs. And so a lot of the information that's kind of covered that we overview is this is all the public information. There's nothing kind of private or confidential with some of these kind of components here. This is when you're breaking down and analyzing it from that side. So I wanted to make that disclaimer. So let's pull this up here. But boom. All right. So we've got a little bit of a walkthrough of the different projects that we're going to talk about here on the left. And then what's going to be kind of fun is after we go through and explain a little bit about their structure, how they work, what their incentives look like. We're going to talk about one of the main kind of steal this, like what is the helpful component, what is the interesting thing that they do, and a little bit on like the watch out, like this is something you have to be aware about when you're running a program like this, or maybe some of the cracks around the program and things like that, just to learn from, right? And then we're going to go and pop them on the board here. We're going to rank them from S tier, A, B, C, and F, is how we're going to look at dropping these on and ranking them. We'll try not to be too biased here and there, but that's the flow of what we're going to get into here. And this is all in the spirit of good fun and lessons and learning and all those things. So, yeah, without further ado, let's jump in and get started. So, right at the top here, we're going to start with Midnight. So, this is privacy related project connected to the Cardano ecosystem. I also know the the fellow there, Jack, awesome guy who built this whole program and everything. And I think it's super interesting from the strategy of what they kind of have out there and how it's set up. I think it's really, really valuable and in a very cool program. I think this will rate a little bit higher as well. And the component that I want to touch on from a takeaway perspective is the structure here when it comes to the tiered approach. And there's another project coming up here soon that we'll also talk about when it comes to structures and tiers. I think there's a lot of pros and cons to having a tiered ambassador program. So let's just like mention that and maybe what do you even mean by a tiered ambassador program? So meaning that there's different levels, right? Like there's maybe a more open level and for Midnight, like pretty much everyone who applies or goes in, you can be in the third tier no matter what. You pretty much automatically get accepted as a recruit, right? And so that's like the larger open layer of the ambassador program. And then there's components of what you have to do to move up or to get, accepted or to get promoted into the next tier. And then there's even more components you have to do to get promoted or accepted into like the top tier. And so obviously the top tier, there's much more responsibility. Maybe you're more of a country lead. I'm not sure exactly how some of the details are set up here, but that's the overall structure when it comes to the tiered layer of things. I think what you have to watch out for with tiers is just the extra layers of complexity. With more, complexity comes potential cracks, comes potential, issues. And I talk about this quite a bit when it comes to running these types of programs overall, the problem of the death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like it may not be the one big thing or something that breaks, but it's just a consistent component of DMs or a submission process or an approval here or this. And it's like they just start to compound if you have a lot of surface area. So you need to have really strong operational layers and things like this if you want to run a tiered program, right? So that's like one of the things that I would say is an important element here. And then the other aspect to their tiered approach is they have they have a published a clock. So it's members can see every other month when the next advancement window is for them to potentially advance up a tier or whatever, right? And the bars and the elements of what they need to do to get there is all laid out. The incentive side of things with the leaders eventually getting event budgets, the founder sessions, stuff like that is all then covered, right? So yeah, that's a little bit of my overview on Midnight. What do you think? Any sort of insights there, Tommy? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think like you make a good point of tiered tiered like ambassador programs are really complex and they do need the right infrastructure. However, I feel like they're great when they're done right because you're not rejecting anyone. Like you're allowing everyone the chance to prove themselves, to turn up. And I think of it as more like almost like an apprenticeship, right? Where like you're not saying no to everyone can come along and they're just going to progress and climb the ladder dependent on the work they're doing, the efforts they're putting in, like the results and everything all above, right? So yeah, I think they're great, but like you say, then I do feel like some teams will do this, have these great ideas and not quite realize like how much work goes into on their end to do this properly. And then they
Yeah.
end up doing the opposite and having a negative effect on people and they like get stressed out because they're not getting all the DMs back. They're not like, it can just be chaos if it's not done right.
Yeah, no, it's totally true, and it's a really interesting point when you think about, what are your other alternative options to starting an ambassador program? If you just have a single tier, it's likely you're going to do two things if you have a single tier. You're going to either one, you're actually there's three different ways you can do it. You're going to open up applications and let people apply to be an ambassador, depending on how the program is set up, especially if there's anything like financial, like you get a budget or whatever, or different components like this um, you're going to get like probably a lot of applications maybe. And a lot of them you then have to sift through to see what's valuable, what's a bot application, what's an AI application, who am I really trying to target here? And that can be then you create a lot of work for yourself that you may not even anticipated. Um, the second way, which is I've seen some programs do, which I think is interesting, is by a direct nomination process, which a few programs do, which I think is very cool, where you can only become an ambassador if an employee of the company or another ambassador nominates you to be an ambassador. So it's like a nomination type of approach, which I think is quite interesting. And then the third one is one that we recommend projects really start with, which is to look at the history of people who've already just organically contributed and been valuable and reach out to them and invite them into the first stage. I think we've always talked about how that's a really great first way to do it. Um, but the benefit and the beauty of then the multi-tier component is if you've got great systems and automation on that bottom tier, it just becomes a ladder and just a straight component of if you want to become the top level ambassador, you just have to work your way up the ladder. And like social ladder aspects and gamification to that, if you're really driving real results and you're proving yourselves amongst it, then you can catch the attention of the team basically and get to that higher level
And
echelon.
people grow together with it as well. There's that
Yeah,
journey, that experience of them that you're not going to get in, like you say, if you
yeah.
just got this one tier. So
So a tiered program on the tier list. um, I'm gonna put Midnight up at A class, I think. What do you think? You think A feels pretty
I
strong
think
to
I
me.
think it's up there for sure.
Yeah.
Plus, I love their branding. I love Midnight, so it's like it's all good.
Yeah, and I mean the program is actually it's called the Night Force, which is a pretty badass name. I'll give it that, right?
It's making
All right.
me want to go and join.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. Let's jump. Let's jump all the way to the bottom here. Boom. Let's jump to consensus. Because this is older scaled aspect. Like, consensus, everyone knows, the ones who create and incubated MetaMask and all this different stuff. When you hear about someone who worked at Consensus, you kind of suddenly know, like, oh wow, they're an OG. It's like you worked at Consensus in the early days, as they call them, like the good old days when there was had a large team, and crypto was rallying, as it does in its cycles and whatnot. But yeah, a little bit of information here on the Consensus program. So this was one, as I mentioned before, there was more of an elite creative tier that was only by nomination. So this is one of the ones that had a nomination aspect, which I think is fascinating. No form, no queue, saving you a lot of operational cost from a review perspective on, not wasting your time going through applications or submissions or research on who could be high quality, but taking it as a component of human referrals, right? Which I think is super super strong and valuable, right? Um, but yeah, I'm curious to know from you, like, Tommy, like, if you've seen anything from the consensus program. I mean, I haven't actually heard much like results from it or anything, right? Or seen where it exists lately. So I'm curious if it's come up on your roadmap at all. This is just one of the programs that got picked up when we were doing some scraping and analysis of like these Web3 projects. Anything that's come up on your map, and what do you think about the nomination type of tier?
Yeah, I mean, no, not a lot on my end, but this is a byproduct of having it nomination only. It's very sort of almost secretive and like very exclusive, which pros and cons of that can be obvious, but I feel like consensus is a bit of a different kind of league as well of like what they kind of need. And I mentioned it at the start, like depends on their goals. It depends on what their vision and what they're trying to do with the people that they're getting to participate. The reason why people are super proud to have like, X consensus and stuff on their Twitter bio, for example, is because it means that they like, got to that level. And it was very sort of like, very exclusive. So
All right, so I just pulled up my notes, and yes, it has actually been, or it's been abandoned. So this relaunched at one point mid 2023. Now the community page 404 errors. There's no successor program, and the orphaned application form still floats on the internet, collecting hopeful submissions that nobody will ever read. So I don't know how highly we can rank this one. The AI tells me one fix, just take the form down. Respect costs nothing. So, um, yeah, a little bit harsh there, but interesting on the consensus side. I mean, maybe this is one that we think about, what would revival look like for consensus? Does consensus need some sort of program? They've got so many other products now. What would that look like when it comes to a program for them potentially, right? I don't know. It's an interesting thought, but I think we'll have to give consensus an F.
yeah,
It's
I think it's going to be. I didn't think we'd just jumped straight to an F, but yeah, for sure. I
well,
mean, it's no,
we
it
could
deserves an F. It deserves an F for leaving that form up for sure. No offboarding process there for consensus.
giving people the hope. All right, sweet. Let's get back to it. All right, this is actually a good one. Let's go up to
Oh yeah.
Chainlink. One of the reasons, Chainlink was one of the first ambassador programs to talk about reverse engineering that I really broke down. Chainlink as a company did incredible and does incredible from its component of like BD and partnerships. I mean, Chainlink is partnering with everybody. Like they got all the partnerships, they got all the great integrations. The teams, fantastic. They really like crush it with a lot of things, right? And they've been around for quite some time. And one thing that they did to establish just overall awareness as a company, they did something that a lot of projects steer away from because it's expensive, but they put out a lot of educational resources all sorts of educational resources, so many blogs, so many YouTube videos, and they put up stuff like even like how to be a DevRel. If like you look Google like how to be a DevRel and certain things, like you'll find Chainlink articles and YouTube videos and stuff like that, and it's great stuff, you know. And so I did a little bit of an analysis walking through their ambassador program. There's a few things I can just rattle off the top of my head that I really like. Things where they have a good component of showing the status and highlighting the members on their website. I think this is really easy for programs to do. Some low hanging fruit. Get a web page and your ambassadors feature their like Twitter PFP and get them on your web page, right? Just showing that you support them, that you direct them. They're so proud of that. They literally will share that page to people and be like, oh, you can find my profile on like the featured ambassador page, right? Um, and on those pages, like Chainlink had two, right? And that's why the one thing I really took away from Chainlink early on when I was first breaking them down, probably 3 or 4 years ago, was how they ran two programs side by side that had very specific kind of elements of, you know, you're a good fit for this program or you're a good fit for this program. And the one was more of a technical track and the one was more of a non-technical track, right? I think it was developer experts and community advocates, I think was the two. Yeah, it's right here. Was the two different tracks that they had. And so I think they did a great job with laying out the structure of what was expected, the value exchange, right, on each of those different sides, and who you are being a good fit for one or the other. Um, and yeah, they mentioned, you know, verified referrals carried some weight, but the steal this component is to run advocate program and expert programs as siblings, not roommates. I think it's interesting. Sharing a lot, they do share a lot of the brand and a lot of components there and the community energy. But then there's obviously they have a little bit of their own separate lanes. And I think where there's one beauty component to it, though, is also having them their separate lanes and components of exchange, but then designing cross pollination aspects so that, you know, maybe some of the content creators or community advocates can understand or explain some of the technical concepts that the developer experts are breaking down or helping, you know, with other builders and whatnot, right? So yeah, that's a little bit more breakdown of Chainlink. What do you think about Chainlink? I think you're a fan, I know.
Yeah, I'm a long-term Link Marine, you could call me, you know. But yeah, I mean Chainlink again, it's like on its own sort of league in the grand scheme of things, but allowing two separate sort of pathways, and then like you mentioned, finding ways to cross-pollinate. This is a great way for a lot of programs because everyone's got their own strengths. So if you're just looking for that kind of one kind of persona, you're almost like excluding everyone else. So at least like allowing, like you say, the community advocates and then the sort of technical side, and allowing this sort of sibling, not sibling rivalry, should we say? So let's call it a brotherhood, and just really like it's a great way for teams to approach it. But as you mentioned at the start, it can be pretty pricey doing stuff like this because it's effectively you're running two different ambassador programs, and then there's this layer of education on top of it. But educating all of the users, all the participants, all developers, everyone wants to be part of the ecosystem. It's number one priority for a lot of these, and Chainlink have really done that well over the years. Actually, you know, this isn't just a single program.
Yeah,
So
no, I would say though is I think there has been some fatigue that they've hit because
mm,
I've noticed over the last little while there hasn't been many new ambassadors listed. I don't think they've kept the program as fresh. I think even right now the application page basically mentions something about 2025, so I don't even know how actively it's even working right now. But I mean, what they had set up with everything and their design strategy with it is super well put together. But I think this is a thing that we're also seeing a lot in the Web3 space, especially when it comes to bear markets and bull markets, like your ambassador programs to survive the cycles and ultimately to like, I guess you could say, like this component of fatigue is a really difficult element with ambassador programs because you go through these different cycles, especially with programs that aren't incentivized, like, people, are how long can you really just be about the mission and then like a product doesn't really pull you into that point or doesn't allow you to get more connected to the brand at some point, right? And so how do you design against fatigue with some of these programs? I think that's a really difficult one. I mean, overall, so many ambassador programs, I think, really struggle with like the design structure components to them and that fatigue layer. So I think there is some signs of fatigue with Chainlink with this, and they probably could use some revival strategy with it. So for those reasons, I think I'm going to put it right in the middle at a B for now. What do you think?
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I don't like to give it less than that because of what they've achieved already. But like you say, fatigue is a big thing that especially in the crypto industry, in the crypto markets, right? How crazy wild it is. People will turn up every day if their little portfolio is going up, and it's like, they'll put all the effort in, and once it goes the other way, they've got jobs, they've got lives, and if you're not getting much value and you're going to be part of the program for many years, it's like, yeah, it's gonna wear on you.
I think a lot of these programs actually have a component of fatigue, these big ecosystems and projects. So I think we're probably going to have quite a few towards the bottom scale of this tier list, and then only a couple that really kind of shine through, to be honest. So we'll have to see what we see here. Um, let's
We
jump
might
to
have to
Alio.
extend. We might
Another,
have to extend the bars if we fill up the bottom too much. Eh?
yeah, right. Let's jump to Alio. The points machine. I think Alio, I remember as well, had a component when I last researched and looked through what they were doing of like fatigue in a certain sense, but also more so in program redesign, and especially with their economy of their program. I think this is another thing to be one of the things to keep your eye out for is if you're designing an economy of a certain aspect to like points, you often need to kind of redesign your cohorts and your systems to kind of balance that in the right way, right? Which can be difficult in these different elements. But they had quite a economy to, a meme earning you 2 points, a thread up to three, an online meetup with six, a real world meetup with verified room 10, technical contributions 15. So you knew what they were prioritizing, right, from their point system. Um, and I think when it comes to then the machinery around, I guess you could say, the incentive layers, the token distribution keyed directly to like the results of different things, managing that. And I think this is where I may be hypothesizing. I don't know as much detail to it. I have talked to a team a few times, but the aspect of like the ROI of the programs, right? Like this is another big thing that comes up. It's like you invest, incentives or rewards or, reimbursements for events into these programs. And then, what do you actually get on the ROI side of a meme, of a thread, of these meetups, right? And if you can't really connect the business value from these different components of what the ambassadors are doing, it's sometimes really hard to make a more sustainable case for these projects. And I think that is something that I would also say um, is like an asset. You need to invest into it, right? When it comes to these programs, it's not something you can expect to like run the program and get an ROI in month one. That's extremely difficult. But it's like when you're investing into an asset that then starts to like, pay you dividends back each month and then starts to compound and starts to become something, right? So that's just some overall, I don't know, maybe side tangent on this aspect a little bit. But I think, it says, they did great verification first applications, proof of product use, plus a short video before review, filters 90% of noise at zero human cost. We actually also did this with the Eigen program as well with applications. There was a stages there that were, you had the application form, and then there was a invitation for certain people through the form to record a self-recorded video, right? And to save you before you maybe do an interview with some of them. If they can't even take the time to self-record a video, are they going to be able to be strong enough, mission aligned, and passionate enough to do more of any other components to these programs, right? It's a bit of like the tester side of things, right? Um, but yeah, and then the watch out here is whatever the points price the community will manufacture, you know, so cheap memes, cheap threads, you get start to get more farming for some of these things. When you understand like the points and the gamification layer, you play the game, right? It's like that's what we do as humans. If we know, you know, well, I could make a meme that in 2 seconds with AI, or I could do research and creative and use Adobe Design and get all wild with it, and provide something really insane, but I still would only get 2 points. It's like, you know, these are the different games that we have to understand when it comes to the gamification of the results aspect, right? Which is something to kind of know. So, yeah, what do you think about Alio so far?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I like look at someone running a program and one of the first things I see is points, I'm like, oh, don't just don't do it, because you're just going to attract like the wrong kind of people most of the time, and then the quality of the deliverable is going to drop, like you say, like, you know, because they're just going to find ways of doing it quicker, getting more points. However, I think when they're done right, and you know, there's maybe limits to them, like you can only do like 2 memes per week or something like that. But again, you've just got people there that aren't doing what they should be doing. And that's like using the privacy of Alio, or like, you know, building on there. And again, like there's these different ways you can do it. But for me, I just like, yeah, I've never liked the approach of just, for me, it's just like a dog with a stick and a sausage on a stick, and it's running after, and then they're going to be disappointed with the token price, or if that converts to tokens. And then if it doesn't convert to tokens, they're disappointed, and like that you're just setting up for so much disappointment. Like that's how I see it a lot of the time.
Yeah, and this is another one that they haven't had any sort of public announcements about the program. It's pretty much gone silent last year. The last kind of update around it was May 2025. There's no open application channels. The rules addressed only to existing members. And I think when I last looked in the Discord as well, there's lots of people even asking, like, you know, when are applications going to open again? So it's another one of those ones that, yeah, I think for me, I probably feel like if it's somewhere in the middle of the pack, similar. I don't know if I quite rank some of the strategy aspects as good as Chainlink, but C also feels. I mean, it could be C, I guess. If it's that point, it's probably a C. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like their verification, you know, for the applications, and I love that start. Um, but then it's almost like, you know, after that point, it just becomes farming, points farming, you know, engagement farming
Yeah.
for them. And with the death of InfoFi and stuff like that, and people realizing, you know, this isn't the way. Yeah, I don't see a lot of programs in the future basing themselves on them kind of systems, you know.
Well, that's interesting. Well, let's jump to a little bit of a throwback here with optimism. Um, and so this actually isn't so much of a direct ambassador program as it was more of like what Optimism was running with the community involvement around its like governance, right? And what they had is what did they call it? Was it the badges they call them? Oh my goodness, I'm blanking right now. I think it mentions it here. There was the Optimism badge holders. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember you could be a badge holder with Optimism. If in a way it was almost like a political campaign as well, I would say for people who were badge holders, they were usually kind of well known in the ecosystem. They had some component of, well, obviously, of like knowledge and whatnot. And these badge holders had a lot of power to be able to direct funds towards different projects that were building things on Optimism. And the way that it also worked with this was a concept of retroactive funding. And the reason why I jumped to this one is because it's almost the opposite approach, retroactive funding as a mechanism, compared to like pointing people's towards points for activities. It's like almost the exact opposite. Like when you're looking at what Alio had in a certain sense of saying, hey, do these things, get these points, then you get these rewards. People, they lean into that gamification layer, right? The way retroactive funding would work was that Impact was scored differently in each season. And so you didn't know the rules to the game of what impact and how it was going to be scored and how much rewards you would get, right? And then as a result, it was a little bit kind of random, but with the overall arching message of like, just do cool shit, do good things in the ecosystem. And then once you do it, submit your project for retroactive funding. Like you've already done it, you drove impact in the ecosystem. Now submit it for funding, right? And this is then where there is the component of almost the political side with like badge holders and different elements to the governments being connected. And so I think you had layers where there was a little bit more, um, like I guess you could say, delight and surprise around getting funded large amounts for different projects that you leaned into that actually drove real impact. You had people do much better job at when they started to do something. They say, "Hey, let's actually think about submitting this for retroactive funding with optimism as well." And so as a result, let's make sure we track everything really well and report it because that'll help our application for retroactive funding and whatnot, right? So I just think it's an interesting mechanism and one to kind of drop in here as an example, right? But definitely something to watch out, which I think was really brought a lot of cracks into this whole program was that the governance as a program really strains volunteers, badge holders with like process weight, right? Like it's most brands need more advocacy and not like a parliament. I mean, but this is more of like a DAO. Obviously, AI is being a little bit bold in its statement with this, whatever, right? But I think like the retro logic is always interesting, and I even leverage that for components of some of the different ideas that we even had, with some of the Eigen programs and other things where we wanted to delightfully surprise some of the people who were doing contributions that were outstanding or providing a lot of value, right, for what they were doing, right? But yeah, that's my little rundown. What do you think on it?
Yeah, I really like it. I feel it's a very difficult approach to motivate people unless they already like love the brand, they love like building stuff on there. But what I do feel like it creates is like once them first members like get their funding for it and then they talk about it and everyone's like, wow, how can I do that? And you're like, no one knows. It depends like how good of a thing you build for us. And it just like on all the levels, everyone's like, oh, okay, I'm going to level up. And like, as you mentioned, it helps people be more serious, collect the data properly, like, build something really of the quality so that they know when their time's to come, it's going to be the best it can be. So yeah, I really like it. The approach of this.
Yeah, and I think like um, obviously, I think like the optimism DAO side of things right now, and obviously this whole approach with retroactive funding is I don't know when the last retroactive funding round was, but it's been a while. So it is another one of those ones that sits in the realm of uh, an interesting program in the past. So, but I think the structure for it and everything is fascinating. So I think probably putting somewhere around C or B. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll push it up to B. Like I say,
Let's push it to B.
I really like how the approach is.
Awesome. All right, this next one here, let's jump down to injective. So, fascinating thing about injective, if you're doing research on AI, using AI, ChatGPT, or any of these different things, even years ago when ChatGPT, was in its early infancy, I don't know what it is about injective, but like they rank so well on just like SEO and AEO, I guess, on being referenced as a source, as a site when you're asking programs about ambassador programs in Web3. Claude, ChatGPT, it always seems to kind of come up, right? And one of the reasons, though, there's a bit of a component to it. It's again to this a very tiered program. There's 5 ranks, and they're very cool. They do a good job with the storytelling and the lore aspect to it, which we're also going to touch on with some of the other projects here. But they have from newcomer to master, and all of them are basically considered an aspect to the ambassador program, right? And it has that open layer for starting, right? Ninja, warrior, knight, lord, master, these different levels. So it's kind of very heavily, guild gamified, this kind of ethos. But I mean, when you look across like the identity and like how large the program was of people who got into like Ninja, there was like 200,000. So it's like, can you really even say like, 200,000 ambassadors? Like, I don't know. It's a little bit wild, right? I think like if you're saying you've got 200,000 ambassadors, they're not really real ambassadors. You know what I mean? So I think like there's a blurry line on that definition or that component of that social ladder and of that layer. But they have also done some reconfiguration, relaunches several times as well to try and figure it out, right, on what their incentive model is and these things, right? So, and all of it apparently, like the top level was really pushing towards, more opportunity as a job offer was like what they were kind of dangling as the main component on, this, which is interesting to put out there publicly, right? I think it's great as an example case study when it happens organically. When you run an ambassador program, you can find people within this program who would be amazing hires to be on the community team, maybe on the DevRel team, maybe like as an engineer or something, right? Um, but I think you got to be very careful about like dangling that as the promise or as the carrot, right? Um, but more just almost like that retroactively done a certain sense of like, oh my goodness, this person's an amazing fit for this. Let's actually interview them and put them through the process for it. And then if you actually hire them, this actually happened with Monad. There was like a community competition. The dude won the meme competition. Then he was writing this other content. Then he started the interview process. And he went from being a passionate community member to then being a moderator to then working on their marketing team. It's like, what a great, like, um, flow of events. I would say that's fantastic when that happens, but using it directly as as like the full on summit perk or carry is a little bit wary, right? Um, and then yeah, the watch out they have here is 200,000 badges is not a community; it's just a mailing list with ranks. When membership outruns relationship capacity by three orders of magnitude, the badges stop meaning anything. I think there's like some merit to that, right? On the funneling social ladder layer. Um, but also, I can see the other side of it where it's just like, well, maybe you just draw the line on, where the real program membership starts versus where it's more of a proving ground, right? So like there's different caveats amongst that. But yeah, what do you think about Injective? I'm actually not that familiar with the platform or the protocol itself.
Yeah, I think I traded a token a little while ago, but that was about it. Didn't jump into the ambassador program. But touching on, yeah, the huge amount of numbers of ninjas, right? It's like you say, people are going to perceive that as like they're not real ambassadors, they're not really bringing any value. But when you like dive into it a little bit more, and then there's like monthly payments for mid-range ambassadors, it's really just like job applications. Like they're just trying to get up to that paid, that paid level. And again, it's like I've never liked this approach, and especially it is a strange one saying like it can turn into a full-term role, because we love to see it. We've seen it ourselves where people like rank up. You just gave the example yourself of like people getting up through the ladder and actually becoming part of a team. That's a dream of everyone what wants to get on an ambassador program pretty much. But just having so many participants to filter through, there's a lot of noise. So for me, it's just like, that's the infrastructure side. Unless they've got solid infrastructure to really filter out the noise and find the true ambassadors to level up, I'm sure that team, like, had some headaches in DMs and the amount of like questions they're going to have to answer and stuff. So yeah, infrastructure heavy for that. But again, I don't. Yeah, I'm feel the same as you. Maybe C. That definitely, I can't put it on the same level as Linked or
Yeah,
Optimism here.
let's put it on C.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm actually not too familiar with even like are there applications open right now? It's like the current health. I'm actually not aware of it. So, but yeah, there's some lessons to learn there. Hopefully, there's some interesting insights to take away and whatnot from it. Um, let's keep going up here. So, Polkadot, the cautionary epic. This is an interesting one. I think the Polkadot team has had this program transferred from a couple different hands. I think they've had three full redesigns. And its dysfunctions are better documented than most program successes. There's a lot of elements to learn from here with the Polkadot layer, right? And the biggest lesson that I take away from is when it comes to the incentive layer with ambassador programs and what they are as ambassador programs, right? And the reason being is like they had components of salaries, right? So generation one, generation two, generation three. And that was a big lesson when they brought in this component where they had, $10,000 a month for 21 head ambassadors, right? And then that basically generated, you know, near zero interest. It's from a program dynamic perspective for the other unpaid ranks of the ambassador program below. It was like, well, I just want this, and if it's not this, then I don't want anything to do with it, right? And so this made some interesting kind of program dynamics. I think there was a lot of layer to kind of communication to like the even the product on the shipping side, things with different components and just a whole mixed bag of different elements. I think the whole Polkadot ecosystem is fascinating to me. I feel like it kind of sits over here in the Web3 world. And there's some brilliance in components too. I think like Parachain and the components at Polkadot and the technology stack itself. But I feel like to me, at least from I don't know what's curated around my feed and things, there was never really strong, business market fit. Um, from what I have seen, whatever, right? So yeah, I'd be curious to know on your side, like, what do you think about, Polkadot, the program? Have you seen any, you know, examples of it out in the wild or any sort of insights there, Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, like, I just can't get over this what you've brought up here, the 21 head ambassadors at 10K a month, like, and then just having this, like, people like, wow, oh, okay, I haven't got that. What else is there for me offered to me? Nothing. Because it's just like, come on, it's just like so top heavy of these head ambassadors. And again, you're just gonna get people there that are just trying to extract value and they're not really trying to bring value. It can work and they can find some amazing people that way and they can put all the effort in the world and make it amazing. But again, it's just like when you're like dangling a salary in front of people, it's not really what an ambassador program is about. There's this whole thing of like, you've got the difference between um a company saying that they're great, oh, they're the greatest thing in the world, and then you've actually got a user that is there for free saying that they're great. It's two different things. But if that user's getting paid 10K a month to talk about them, it's like, come on, it's just like you're going to attract the wrong kind of attention, mate.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Like I definitely think there's layers to creative and to like events and like the expense side of that and kind of covering those different layers. But I think the real component to drive in on is, professional development, status, role, and like exposure. And these things are going to become more valuable. And I think that's why ambassador programs are going to be doing really well soon as well, just because like you're going to need to be able to kind of stand out in some sort of way and learn how to position yourself within different ecosystems, and they just bring such great opportunity, right? And so, yeah, I think that's something that is not. It's a difficult game, the strategy to kind of do this, right? And I think that Polkadot. They then the next generation they remove the salary completely, so they kind of learned their lesson with it. They're like, oh, okay, removing it completely, and they've announced something on their site that they're having a fourth generation. So like maybe fourth time's the charm. So I mean, I think right now with what we have, with what we know, I think we got to put them at the bottom here. um, and yeah, really curious to know what happens on fourth generation and how that kind of plays out, right? But there's some thoughts and insights and overview on Polkadot. All right, this is a interesting one actually. Let's jump back to the top here. So Uniswap. Um, just so you know as well, this was actually a little bit of a proposal process that we had with some of the Uniswap team and whatnot, our own kind of ideas on what could an ambassador program look like that we share with the team and we were in conversations with them on. And so this is all just like a design for an idea. They don't actually have any sort of active program, and they actually cut like a large component of kind of community functions and everything like this at the beginning of the year. So this was all just a bit of our own ideation around a structure, a three-tier structure, to be able to help expand into different countries around the different types of roles. So it was a bit of a mixture around in a way, kind of what Midnight ended up doing. This was even before that, though, before they Midnight even launched theirs, of a three-tier program, but then also with a bit of that inspiration from Chainlink around the different kind of categories of how you be kind of contributing to Uniswap, right? So not too much to go into the success of it or whatnot, but we sure had a lot of strategy and design and thoughts pulled through it all. So I think in its actual execution, because it never saw the light of day, we're gonna have to put Uniswap at an F. But if we got it out there in the light of day, it could be rocketing right to S tier. Who knows? Any thoughts on Uniswap side, Tommy?
I mean, we discussed that for many hours, and yeah, I mean, like that program, I think would have been really nice, man. Just bad timing of the markets or whatever. I know this same time was like there was a lot of every day we see huge layoffs in the Web3 space and stuff like this, and I suppose a lot of these foundations, a lot of these organizations are like the last place they're going to now put money in towards is like an ambassador program or building out these elements. But yeah, who knows, man? Let's rekindle this flame and revisit it.
And I think probably like from a decision from Hayden or from the Uniswap team in a certain sense, like again, he wants to know ROI, right? And
Hmm.
if he can't see a component, and they also changed their um like the fee mechanisms and whatnot, like the unification that went through in December, or whatever. And this was also just off the back end of that, right? And so when it comes to the protocol changing in the way its revenue structure and everything, right? And then not being able to maybe tie as much direct attribution to it, and trying to understand maybe also dynamics of the market and how we're going to survive. Like I said, these are often assets when you're building these programs that are meant to pay off in the long term. If you're building one of these programs and thinking through it in the right way, you're thinking with a 10-year vision. And I'd like to think that most of these companies have the capacity to think at a 10-year vision, but ultimately some people, even on these larger projects are thinking more just on like, how do I survive these different markets and whatnot, right? But I mean, revenue models and things like this, and just being able to attribute to it, it's an interesting game, right? To kind of think through around investing into the mind share and then into the attribution, the business case for it, and understanding the full cycle in between, depending on who you're speaking to and how that all works, right? But yeah, no, let's keep going. So, Stellar. Yeah, definitely excited about the Stellar one. They've just announced a little bit of their relaunch to, they call it SAP 2.0, which is the second version of their program, and they're relaunching it right now. And I think it's really exciting what they're doing. They have their handbook and everything. It's all public. You can check it out. And they have an overview of how the program works. One element that's interesting from a structure perspective, and you may notice this, you might see like Ryzen and some of these other companies that are owning as an organization partnered with Stellar to help run the chapters in the different countries. And these organizations that are running these chapters in these other countries, they have like team that are in these countries, and it really helps, I think, Stellar as well from a structure perspective to be able to facilitate, organize, and kind of distribute out some of like the quarterly goals and different things, and then the organizations help bring those into the chapters in the respective countries. And it's an interesting system. So they go for more of like an organization partnership model, and then down into the kind of flowing down as a hierarchy perspective into the relative respective countries. And I think like it's a really smart system for them as such a large professional organization that has really big like B2B institutional deals and finance, and a really good example of a program where you might think some of these protocols in the Web3 space and ecosystems, they're like, yeah, we're not going to invest that much into community because we just want to get our efforts by going direct B2B with deals and things like that. it's like Stellar is really spearheading and opening up different growth and awareness in countries through their chapters, through their members, through their ambassadors, and that's like allowing for other really cool partnerships and things to occur. Like I think really neat I saw is Barcelona. They have launched a wallet, like a little bit of a it's like a fan experience wallet or something like this. And Stellar is powering like the back end of it for the payments and components to it. And as a user, you have no idea. It's like fully abstracted. So it's not like you have to understand what Stellar is or understand what blockchain is or anything. But they're powering that for like Barcelona, which is like I think super cool. I mean, I love football and whatnot, obviously. So I think these types of things where bringing the technology into other countries is a model that they're leveraging that reminds me quite a bit of Douglas Atkin. If you're into community stuff, there's a great YouTube video. Douglas Atkin, he did a talk at CMX on the snowflake strategy, is what he talks a bit about. And what that means is you find that leader in a new country, which is like the beginning of the snowflake, right? And then that leader or that person um, basically builds the team around them and or also like inspires and broadcasts the mission and they do their advocacy and that kind of builds out like the flakes of the snowflake, right, into like a new region, right? And so I think this type of approach is something that's very, very interesting. Obviously they're wanting a lot of builders, so they're really, leaning in on this component of active builders and whatnot. We've got the Meridian Hackathon coming up here in Lisbon pretty soon, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I think like the layer of what they do with creating budgets and understanding how much they're going to spend per different kind of country and walking through it in that way is makes a lot of sense. I think the only thing to watch out for is when you're contracting multiple organizations in their structure perspective in overlapping territories. Maybe there's difficulty if there's more than one organization. How do you layer the structure, the legal, or the ownership, or the territorial component to it, right? Something that's always just to be aware of with any type of thing, right? But yeah, it's a bit of Stellar. What do you think about Stellar, man? I know we've been together to some Stellar events.
Yeah, I mean, they do everything the best events, programs. I mean, Stella's been one of the biggest names for many years. They are definitely a team that you can confirm yourself that have got like, a bigger than a 10-year vision. They're just trying to take over the world, right? But it's like when they're really doing their job in this global scale and they are building out these regions, properly. It's all down to infrastructure. Honestly, it's like what you just said about overlapping. They'll have an organization in this country, an organization in this country, a partner in this country. It's like they need to collect that data correctly across the board. They need to be able to see the results, to see their return investment and see how they can scale it up. But yeah, for sure, I'm with you here, man. SRA, it's like it's something that I feel as well over the coming years. As they spearhead these approaches into these different regions. And we see the biggest era of onboarding of normal people into the crypto, into Web3 space with the initiatives like the Barcelona stuff, like you say. People are going to really look back and be like, wow, how did they do that? And, it's the regional growth with the proper infrastructure, with the proper teams, with the proper visions. It's a great example.
Yeah, I think I will have to put it like S tier just for a component. I S for Stellar, but no, really like this layer of um, the the second kind of re-innovation of the program structure and all that, and the information that's out there with it, and just the energy moving around it right now, I feel it's one of those ones that's really like up and coming. And that's where you see these like Midnight's kind of up and coming as well. It's a relatively new program, and so there's a lot of attention and energy on it. So the team's really driving it, and the team's also super talented. Jack and them like really bullish on them as a program. If you're interested in looking at ambassador programs, right? Like, and then Stellar as well. Like the team is rallying behind it right now. There's lots of exciting things happening with it. So, I think these two definitely make sense as an up there one. But Look at the time. We probably need to start trucking through some of these a little faster, but this is great. um, let's throw back. Let's throw back to Eigenlayer. This is, a project that got a lot of love for, got a lot of respect for. We did a variety of different work together, transparently, and there's a lot of some of the earlier strategy and whatnot with some of the programs. We ran 2 seasons together with them in collaboration, and we learned so much through this. We built like software based off of like some of the different components just in house to help us manage this program, right? Because it got to be so active. But the biggest like lesson to kind of teach, I would say, around this was the way we approached the pilot to then the first season. We ran the pilot as invitation only. And so we used all this analysis to find members who were already contributing to like the vision and the innovation that Eigenlayer was doing at the time. And we then interviewed them as well. We went directly from invitation if they accepted to directly an interview. So we got to know these people super closely, and ran it with 18 initial creators, right? And ambassadors, and we really listened to them. That's the other lesson, is like we took them in, we really listened to them. We probably collected over 100 pieces of feedback within that first 3 months of that program, and we really structured like the elements to the culture and the process and how they did submissions and like the value add, all based around that feedback. And we had some really great buy-in working together with the Eigen team. Shriram was participating. He was hopping on calls with them once a month. And in some of the events that we had in different countries, one really cool thing we did is we even live streamed Shriram into an event, right? And so I think it was Vietnam was one of the ones, or maybe it was Thailand. We did both of them, and there was about 60 or 70 people actually at the event, and all of a sudden it's just like Shriram pops up on screen. And some of the photos and the videos, everyone was like, "Whoa!" It's like, "Wow!" And he gets to give a little bit of his vision, for the next month, what he's working on, a little bit of like a 5 minute voice from the CEO and type of leadership kind of. And Shriram's an amazing like leader as well. Like he's very motivating. He knows how to rally people and whatnot. And and then people got to ask their questions, and they were like, wow, it's like I get to literally have this short 15-minute time with the leader of this company that we're all here for and everything, right? And so that made for great content, that made for great results, that made for great believers and everything, right? So that was a big component of what we learned within that. And then yeah, that's then scaled to the second season that we ran, for the first season I ran with them, which was up to 65 ambassadors. And we ran that in 28 countries. We had events in, I think, 18 countries, drove over 1 million impressions with the content side of things. It was really successful. Um, and yeah, I mean, ultimately, the program ended quite a while ago, and they kind of put it on pause to work on more stuff with product. And there was obviously components, as a lot of these projects are, doing like their pivots into different components of what they're focusing on. So for it not being live anymore. But yeah, no. What do you think, Tommy? Though overall, first, what are your thoughts on some of the stuff that we cooked with Eigen back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, like, great experience for me. You guys were already working with Eigenlayer when, or now Eigen Cloud, but at the time it was Eigenlayer.
Right.
And it was definitely a great learning experience for me. When I think back to it, it's like it was a great example of how we're able to build the right infrastructure and make these connections and these experiences for the different participants, right? You mentioned about just bringing the founder on and having these little connections. It's like these are real experiences, real memories that we're creating through the program. And it really shown. It's shown because people wanted to show it off. And something that people might not know is like some things when we like, looking at our scope of work and stuff like this for these clients, we will never say that they'll get X amount of impressions and stuff like that, because we're not a marketing agent. This is not what we do. This is just a byproduct of building the programs right, of having the right infrastructure, of creating the correct kind of experience for that kind of persona in that kind of community. So yeah, definitely just a great example for us. I would bump it up to A.
You bump it up to A. Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, if it carried on going, man, if it carried on going, what was actually
yeah, I
delivered,
know.
the results, and yeah, okay,
I think
we'll go
like
through.
I think I might go. I mean, I could maybe we'll put it halfway.
No, you're not allowed. You're not allowed. Direct line. Put it in B.
All right, we'll put it in B because as soon as if it was live again, it could probably bump up to A very fast, even all the way up to S. But
Yeah, it's
it's just
true.
not live
It
right
didn't
now.
scale as far as it could have, to be
I
fair.
mean,
So
funny enough, it's like all these basically here are, I think, well, Injective may be live, but all these ones are like not live anymore, right? None of
mm.
these are live. It's amazing to look at that kind of component of what we have right now. Um, oops, blink. Right. Let's keep trucking. We're gonna jump to this one, which I think everyone is probably familiar with, which speaks in its own way to it. And I think it's fascinating that they don't really use the word ambassador, right? Again, people using different words for different things. Um, but like super team, it's like it's almost like Kleenex, you know? People call it by the brand, not by the fact that it's the tissue. And I think like they've done really interesting work around the super team model, finding this component of the super team, you know, employer hire in the country, which I wouldn't even say is a part of really the program, but it's more like they hire someone within a country, very much snowflake model, and then they go out and find the ambassadors and the team around them, right? And when you look at that model per se, right, like and the way that they've really like supported different countries and builders and the passion, the energy around the Solana ecosystem, and just like the meme culture with it and everything, like it's just like a big culture place with Solana, like there's just a lot of aspects to that, right? And they merely make contribution their application as a component of that culture. All the entry is earned through your actual work, and that just makes your selection costs collapse, obviously. So it is one of those layers where you really prove yourself, and you have that public track record. And I think again, it's like they've created such a culture where people, like when I go to conferences and meet a lot of Solana people or go to the Solana events and whatnot, like when you meet the people there and they understand what you're doing, like they want to like help you a lot of time, like in the ecosystem, and especially if you're like in the ecosystem, if you're like in the inn, it's like they want to like really nurture and support you. And if you're not in the inn or you're not in the club in a way, then it's not necessarily directly rude, but it's also like, if you're not in, you're out. So it's like, I feel like there's some interesting cultural aspects. And I guess you could say, what's the word for it? I feel like there's a specific word to describe it. Um, but I don't know. How would you describe it? Maybe it'll come to me.
I feel, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? It's like if you look at what I was mentioning earlier about Midnight with a ladder sort of a tier system, this is like the opposite on the other end, way off on the other scale of like, not only have you got to ship something that's actually contributing and doing that, like not everyone can get in. It's like an Ivy League university approach compared to a sort of apprentice approach, right? So really interesting. Yeah, I mean the results that they've had over years are amazing. It's an amazing ecosystem as well. Super talented people here as well. But along with that, it's like, how do you get to that level to get there? Like, are they just missing out on all this talent below that that they could nurture, they could train up, there's always that question for me of this kind of approach.
Yeah, honestly, they're like, I don't know, I would say A or S.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
they're definitely up there. What would you say?
I mean, the reputation, man, is definitely triple S, an S tier Solana super team, right? I know some super talented people there as well, so like their approach is definitely working for sure.
I know. I got some tips recently that there's some potentially other countries even opening up. So, well, but keep your eyes peeled. Who knows? So that'd be exciting. But yeah, Solana Super Team. I think they're up there. All right, we've just got two more. Let's flip to Arbitrum. This is an interesting one. I honestly haven't been as active in the Arbitrum ecosystem as I was years ago, but man, what a wide, expansive ecosystem with such a range of grants and support and other projects and different things. And um, yeah, I've been kind of a little bit out of the Arbitrum world, if I'm going to be honest, lately, but it was an early part of some of my journey years ago. There's a few uh, things that Arbitrum did in the past that I really loved and learned from. Like I really loved, actually, it's not even in here, but like their Odyssey program they did, where they had this thing where if you were, as a community member, if you went and collected like pieces of NFTs of other ecosystems, like so if you went on used other projects built on Arbitrum using Arbitrum, you'd collect like a little NFT memorabilia, and then if you collected all of them, it made like a super one, whatever, right? Which is just brilliant. It's like encouraging people to try the different projects on their ecosystem and have a little bit of fun campaign around it. So yeah, super expansive ecosystem overall. There's so many amazing community people who've come through Arbitrum, done things at Arbitrum, from the governance and the DAO to the grant funding to all sorts of stuff, right? So it's a very, very expansive ecosystem. And yeah, I think like they had elements of educational programs, university first, open region by region. They went through, they did a really good job actually with student programs. That's one thing they did do well. One of their components is they did a good job. They're one of the first blockchain ecosystems, I think, to really hit like the universities hard, and kind of build relationships with different student programs, I remember. So they did a great job with that. They had components of unpaid by policy, which is a structure perspective, much leaning on the intrinsic side, but like they had cool swag, they had event funding, and then all sorts of grants for like building different things, right, on the ecosystem, like so many different grants. And the grant funding was at different times of the last few years, like flowing in wild amounts to and whatnot to more smaller amounts to everywhere in between, right? From the fire starters to all sorts of different things, right? So lots of different interesting opportunity, lots of regional verticalization, um, owning different programs, native language content streams, like they were really, really wide around this different stuff. Um, and so, yeah, I think they did a good job, like handling segregation in a healthy way around the different regions, around the different programs. But I think it really also became something like a lot of operational complexity and whatnot to it. But curious on your thoughts on Arbitrum, and yeah, what was your familiarity with the ecosystem, by the way, out of curiosity?
Yeah, not a lot, I'll be honest with you. And it does make me wonder because, like, I always remember seeing, like, the great content people were putting out about this, the great sort of hold on education. I believe you're right there. Like, it was like one of the first, like, university like focus programs as well, which is something that's becoming like really hot now and like more growing attention there. Arbitrum's just been a really solid ecosystem, and this program itself, I mean, like, really sort of professional approach with the KPIs and stuff like that. But I also feel like, especially in crypto, it's like there needs to be a lot more room for like creativity and more sort of them sort of things. But overall, great job for Arbitrum, man. They really don't.
Yeah, and I know I think the applications are open right now, apparently. And yeah, they've got some real numbers. They got over 300 ambassadors, 10 regions. They've had up to 122 million impressions and reach across the whole stretch of the program. So they've definitely done some pretty great things when it comes to the community side. I think there's some aspect to like now, instead of direct payments, there is stipends, but there's some kind of confusion or clarity around some of the stipend layer of things. But yeah, I'm torn between putting it on a B or an A. It is active, so it is apparently open right now, but I don't have too much familiarity on whether I'd put it B or A. What are you leaning towards?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to put it on a the same sort. I couldn't say that, like, from what I've seen, it's on the
Yeah.
level of Midnight. So B's a good score still. I mean, like, I don't think the
Yeah.
audience have to be worried
Yeah.
here. It's like,
Yeah. No, I think that's great. All right, last one. Ritual.
Oh, good one.
Um, lore as infrastructure. I gotta say, you look at what Ritual's doing, um, and I guess full transparency. Also, we are, doing some work with Ritual, so this is all components that are, public as well for the program, which you can feel within it. But we've collaborated with them for quite some time, and yeah, I would say like the layer to the lore there and the culture around that lore is really really strong with the program, right? And I think like what they're trying to ship as an ecosystem, as an L1 AI native chain, it's like a huge mission. When you have such a massive mission, like creating a chain that like AI is more natively able to do interactions on and whatnot, and it's like, why another L1, right? We've got all these L1s, like why another one, right? The stronger you have your community, like rallying and supporting you around it and whatnot, it just adds so much like dynamic and so much layers to supporting you with that big mission. Like almost like I feel like the bigger the vision and the vision, the stronger you do need your community to really rally, behind that and help you carry that forward. Otherwise, you just kind of preaching with no one behind you backing you up, right? So great structure with the different kind of role sides of things that they have to it, expectations around the different kind of programs. Um, yeah, and then like there's layers to the different modules that they have. I think the big takeaway overall with Ritual is just the brand mythology um, that really extends itself into everything, the different roles, the kind of vibe, and that shapes the culture. And obviously on like in the incentive layer too, just like the professional development, bringing in these different components that they get supported with and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I think like the thing to watch out for would just be like the keeping like the mission and the product ticket stuff live, like and rolling, right? Like shipping the actual product as an important part then to this, right? So I think there's elements of their test net and everything is in progress right now, and they're in the middle of a bear market, just like soldiering through with their product and looking to kind of go to their next stages of things. So I think like there's a lot here with Ritual, which I think is a fascinating one. And yeah, no, they're exciting and super super cool team and everything. You got any thoughts on Ritual? What do you think about the program?
Yeah, I mean, great team. We know them well. We've had a lot of successes there with the stuff that we've brought to the table as well. And just a great example again of like, what can be the byproduct of having the right infrastructure with setting that law in the infrastructure, and what's really interesting, something I don't think we mentioned, is about like how the dynamics of having a community is like now when you're talking about an AI native chain or things what people are building on the chain, it's like now we have the era of like vibe coding, and obviously all of a sudden everyone's a coder. You've now got like all these tens of thousands of people want to build stuff, and out of them, out of all these entries and all this attention, someone just creates something genius that changes the game. So you've got this like lottery ticket of like someone could just do something to define the game for you, and if you haven't got that, you're not got that chance, right? But yeah, we've got to give it up to Ritual and for them to leading the way, and the stuff that we've built there is amazing. So I feel
Yeah,
like it's too biased of us to put in there.
I
So
know. I was thinking that same thing. I was like,
we're like,
would it be would it be really biased to say, put it in S tier?
just chuck it up there as an S, man, because we're gonna carry on trooping on there as all different stuff as well, man. It's gonna be good.
Let's do
And,
it.
and honestly, if I can speak on the community's behalf, from what I've heard the community say and what the teams heard, what our teams heard of the community say about their efforts, about Ritual team's efforts and doing what they've done and the stuff that we've done, everyone's really enjoyed it. Everyone's like loved it. Everyone's participated. The identity I've got online with everyone having the little Twitter logos and that as well. Like
See it everywhere.
everything works so well. So why can't it be an S, man? Let's be unbiased and give it an S.
Yeah. Yeah. When you see those little sigils in the Twitter bio, it's like the ritualists, the ritual program. It's great. Well, amazing. We made it through all those programs. Yeah, this is a little bit of a walkthrough. Again, just to give like a touch on this, on like the tiering and just some of the different highlights of it. Hopefully, there's some tidbits and some interesting components to take away. I think this resource in general, this whole ambassador example bank with the details, I'm actually building out more of a, call it a vault, call it a resource hub, I guess you could say, which will have a lot more in it as well. A lot of the examples from the podcast, like the different frameworks we go through, the different community frameworks, all the different elements, they're all going to be within this kind of vault, and will be getting access to people to it for free. You just got to register, put your email in, and potentially in the future, not yet, but we may even have like a newsletter at some point. And so, yeah, I'll be sharing as much, trying to not gatekeep anything, as much value as we can on the front edge of innovation in community building and community engineering, as we say. So hopefully super valuable for teams to leverage and utilize. And yeah, maybe potentially even some programs coming up here soon and more good stuff coming. So thank you if you tuned in for this full thing and was just listening to us roast and ramble and rant about different ambassador programs. I appreciate your rigor and your patience, and hopefully it was valuable. And yeah, any last kind of questions, comments, Tommy? Anything you want to throw out there?
Yeah, no, this was fun, man. A nice approach. Looking forward to try and see if we can clip some of this stuff up without being too harsh. But yeah, find my socials here at TommyM_PT on Twitter. And then we'll chuck up Dan's as well. You give us both a follow. Dan's at the Dan Rodman, one of the greatest names on there. And then yeah, our website counity.xyz, and you'll find us on Twitter counity_. But like Dan just mentioned, we try and always give a lot of value. We feel that we're definitely in a part of the market where we're looking at how to do community differently. Like, you know, this is like a whole new thing where people are starting to come around to the idea of, oh, okay, we've had enough of fake engagement, of all this AI around, and like we're just trying to bring the humans first and building programs like this properly, you know, really analyzing, really diving deep into the data. It's what we do best, man. So if there's any teams out there, anyone, like, you know, if you're part of an ambassador program yourself and you want us to give stuff a quick audit, you want us to look at it, see what free value, always reach out. We're always here. But yeah, man, it's been fun. So thanks for your time, Dan. Thanks everyone for turning up, and we'll all see you next time, I suppose.
All right. Peace, everybody. Catch you later.
See you later.